Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you're watching this from and when you're watching this from as well. This was meant to have been a live session directly into Facebook, but I've just had issues this past 25 minutes trying to go live from Zoom. So apologies to those who have been waiting to watch this, but it's going to be recorded and you will have an opportunity to watch this. And even if you have questions as well. So I would like to welcome Jay, who has been very patient with me this past 25 minutes while we try to figure this in. Jay, welcome to High Impact Entrepreneurs in Africa. I'm really delighted to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
So Jay, before I talk to you about how I first met Jay, let me just give you an overview of his biography, his profile. Amazing, he's a serial entrepreneur, and we're really going to glean quite a lot from just his experience and what he's done, and what he's been doing. So Jay is the founder and CEO of Usiku Games. He has a 20-year track record as a successful entrepreneur, digital marketer, and visionary strategist. After leaving Canada in 1995, Jay moved to Asia and completed his MBA at the National University of Singapore. He went on to launch Blue, which will become one of the largest digital marketing agencies in the world. And this was probably late 1995, in the 90s or so. And this is now, you can imagine the experience he has in digital marketing, which would then become one of the largest digital marketing agencies in the world. Jay then partners with his lifelong best friend to create AppMaker, a drag and drop mobile app publishing platform, which has helped over 3 million small businesses around the world to launch their first native mobile app. He's had these two successful ventures acquired. Jay and his family moved to Africa to create Usiku Games, a social impact gaming company. Through Usiku Games, Jay has set upon his largest challenge yet to create the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry across the continent. Jay has advised some of the top brands in the world, including HP, Cisco, Singapore Airlines, Johnson & Johnson, and he's also a TED Talk speaker, right? Yeah, and he's spoken about how remote working is changing the shape of our cities. So Jay, warm welcome here. I mean, amazing experience you have here. I mean, I'm just reading this and I'm like, digital marketing. When did you start that, and when did you sell that?
So we started Blue in September of 1999.
Yes.
That's before Google, before Facebook, before any of those guys were around. Started in a third floor walk-up apartment in Singapore with one designer, one project manager, and two cats, by the way. And then grew it from there to becoming a global powerhouse that WPP acquired in 2007.
So by 8 years, did you have, I know we're talking about Usiku Games, but I'm just intrigued. When you started that, did you have the intention of selling it after 7, 8 years?
No. First of all, I was very young in those days. I was 27 years old. Some of that, I had no idea what we were going to do. And certainly, going in our little walk-up apartment, if you told me that someday it would be huge and global, that's a pipe dream. But with a lot of hard work, and we were absolutely in the right place at the right time, we were able to ride the wave as digital marketing took off, as Southeast Asia took off. It was a very special time in Singapore. And that was the regional hub for Asia Pacific for so many multinationals. We focused purely on Fortune 100 companies at the beginning, and really from an IT perspective. It was absolutely the right place at the right time, and we were able to ride the wave.
So I'm thinking that perhaps mobile gaming, just like you experienced then, that there's a wave coming. So
absolutely.
That may be, and we'll talk about that. I didn't mention what our theme, our topic is today. It's creating opportunities and social impact in Africa. Africa, because really most people here are entrepreneurs, high impact entrepreneurs in Africa from over 40 countries. So I'm sure we can get one or two insights from his experience. And it's creating opportunities by tailoring innovations to local realities. And when we hear from Jay, you're going to understand why this topic was selected, how you tailor innovations to your local reality. You could be in Nigeria, in Namibia, in Kenya. And so how can you begin to tailor these innovations in other areas to your local situation? So Jay, let's get started. I know we've already started, but let's yes. So what's been your experience? You've created and later sold um, two companies. What has been your experience? What did you learn from the first and the second? And obviously that wasn't in Africa. And what can you say if we're bringing the context into Africa? Can you speak around that?
So they weren't in Africa, you're right,
Yes.
but they were both really focused on the emerging markets. So the first business really started with 17 countries in Asia. Asia Pacific was our focus. And then with AppMaker, we were in over 100 countries. And we were primarily, our biggest markets were India, Brazil, Eastern Europe, that sort of thing. And so really what the biggest thing I think I learned from the beginning was to focus on creating solutions that are relevant to the local market and creating a business that from day one has the flexibility and the systems in place to be able to do the localization, both translation for languages, but also customer support representatives, local pricing, local payment methods, all that sort of thing. And if you build that from day one, then it's very easy to add other markets. Whereas, Western or American companies are spoiled by a very large US market. And so they just focus on that for a long time. And then by the time they try to go international, well, now they have a very American mindset. And I think to their detriment. So for example, with us, when I was doing Blue, HP and Cisco were two of my largest clients. And by the time we opened our first US office in Palo Alto, we already covered 60% of the global marketing spend that companies like Cisco were doing because we were in 42 countries. And then we were just adding the US as just another country, a big one, but really single language, single culture, more or less. You could argue that California is different than Alabama or that sort of thing, but generally single market. Whereas the American-based competitors that we were going against, when they would try and open offices in Asia or in Europe, it was very different for them. They were struggling with all kinds of realities. And I think that lesson is absolutely applicable that now that we're here. And it really bothers me. A lot of people say, oh, well, this is an African business, or you're trying to market for Africa. In my mind, Africa doesn't exist. There's no such thing as Africa other than on a map, right? We are dozens of different cultures,
Yes.
2,000 different languages, many different currencies and payment methods, and very, very different realities. People in Liberia are as different from people in Zimbabwe
Absolutely.
as Nigeria is from Egypt, right? These are wildly different markets. And so to be successful here is to recognize that and be open to the realities of each of those markets.
Okay. So I'm reading through what your vision is for Usiku. You talked about the first multi-billion. How do you frame that thinking, right? In terms of just this big, just like you did, I'm starting to talk about the many countries. How does one, particularly in Africa, think beyond what the existing realities are? Because you said here, you've set upon your biggest challenge yet to create the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry. So you're just getting started, I think just a couple of years, and you've set that. How did you dream of that?
So I think to be successful in Africa as a whole requires a little bit of future vision, right? To be able to look beyond what the reality is today. a lot of people come to Nairobi and they say, oh, Nairobi has terrible traffic, which, by the way, it actually really doesn't compared to places like India and all that thing. But
Yeah.
anyhow, but even if
Mhm.
you consider Nairobi traffic, right? 50% of the traffic in Nairobi exists because of all the road construction of the new highways that are being built. And you only have to look 5 years down the road and say, okay, when those are all done, it's going to be beautiful. There's going to be all kinds of big highways now, and it's just going to be an amazing place. But if you look at it for what it is today, you'll walk away and you go, oh, this is a crazy place. I don't want to be there. It's the same thing in the gaming industry is what we're looking at. We know that today, the gaming industry globally, and not including gambling, I'm just talking mobile games and consoles and PC games, is about 120 billion US dollars globally. When you look at the African market, and by the way, about 65 billion of that is mobile, okay? When you look at Africa context, there's 350 million connected smartphones already in Africa. That's more than all of the US, Mexico, and Canada combined. And in Africa, that's growing at 20% year over year. In the US, it's growing at about 2%. And when you look at the gaming industry here, every one of those 350 million phones has at least one game on their phone. Everybody plays some game. But there's no real gaming companies here. There's no local content. There's no local produced options. And so it doesn't require that much future thought to say, okay, there's massive potential here. As hundreds of millions of consumers come onto the internet, many for the first time, all through mobile devices, because Africa is a mobile continent. And they are hungry for content that speaks to them, that is relevant to the local realities. And so
okay,
we're going to create it.
Yeah. No, I'm capturing kind of your thinking, right? And, because in this forum, there are different entrepreneurs at different levels and different countries. Two things. One of when we talked about this, like the traffic, seeing beyond the current reality, and kind of thing. So you are thinking of, another entrepreneur may like, oh, lots of traffic and complain about that. But then you are now thinking, why is there the traffic? Oh, lots of roadworks. That means in the next 5 years, things will be fine. And so thinking, okay, with that, there might be opportunities. So again, it's how do, changing one's mindset in really not looking at so much as the problem, but really is what is causing that problem and getting down to the root of that. Very interesting, actually.
There's no such thing as an overnight success in business as a startup. Each of my last 2 businesses took 8 years to reach maturity. If you recognize that, then you look and you say, okay, well, what's the situation going to be like 8 years from now? And how can I start building today to get there? And that's the important part. Because if you're focused on the opportunity today, no matter what, it's going to take a couple of years to build that business. And so you need to be thinking about, what am I building for?
And also because of that, it develops patience, because you are not kind of looking at right now. You are thinking of what is going to be in the next 4, 5 years, 7 years. So that means that you're actually thinking and reading, which brings me to my second question. You were spot on your numbers. So obviously it means that you do a lot of research. Could you speak into that and the typical, I won't say typical, but generally African entrepreneurs and being able to get this kind of data, and how important is that to make informed decisions?
I think having solid numbers is critical for 2 perspectives. One is to be able to make good decisions. And an entrepreneur is constantly required to make decisions based on incomplete information. That's a part of the challenge of being a startup entrepreneur, right? You never have enough information, but you have to make a decision, right? Recognizing that 80% of those decisions that you make, if you're good at it, will probably be right. 20% are going to be wrong, and you need to be okay with that. Because of those 20% that are wrong, at least half of those you can fix so long as you're honest with yourself about recognizing that they're wrong, right? And that's the key. Being open to being humble to admit when you're wrong and quickly adapting. And if you can do that, then that allows you to make decisions today rather than waiting 6 months to have enough information to make a perfect or better decision, right? And so being nimble, being fast, particularly in this market, is what will make all the difference compared to maybe some of the larger multinational, international entrants that are trying to take advantage of the market.
But we they tend to say here, generally that you don't have available data here in Africa.
No, it's not unique to Africa.
Okay.
I don't think it's unique to Africa.
So
I
essentially
think
look for your own data because it's very important. Research, go ahead.
No, I'm constantly reading reports and statistics. In my industry, there's a lot of people who are doing analytics. None of them are unique to Africa, but it gives me trends. For example, if I look at the casual mobile games, and I ask you who the mobile game players are, most people would say, "Oh, it's teenage boys," right? But when you look at the data, the revenue in that industry, it's actually 60% women. The median age is 34, right? And so if you're crafting a new company, designing for that is going to be much more successful than designing, just shoot 'em up games that are only attractive to teenage boys, who, by the way, in sub-Saharan Africa, don't have a lot of disposable income, right? And so you need to look at international data and say, okay, how is that relevant to the local environment? How can I extrapolate from that to come up with insights that even if I don't have the exact primary data here, I can have a hypothesis to be able to make a decision, test it, do an experiment, and fail rapidly, and then adapt. Because if you're not failing at least 50% of the time, then you're not really experimenting, right? You're just doing what you know is right.
Right.
And really, to do a startup properly, you need to be constantly experimenting, failing, learning, moving on.
I'm not thinking, so in fact, look forward to the failing, but the key is moving forward, right? You get knowledge or information about that, make an informed decision and keep moving beyond that. Yeah. I was going to say access to data from Google. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of people say that failure is acceptable or in a startup. I actually go beyond that. I think failure is necessary. It's a key component to optimization, right? If you're going to optimize your business and try and reach the pinnacle of efficiency or attractiveness or whatever it may be, then you have to fail along the way. And when you're starting a new company, at least the first year, or probably the first 2 years, is like being in a dark room and you're just fumbling around trying to find the light switch. And then someday, all of a sudden, you find it and click, the lights go on and you've got a great business, right? Yeah. But you have to be open to that. And if you think that you're starting a startup today and that you're going to wind up doing what you start the business to do, then you've got a false sense of idea.
So really, expectation is key because you are going in and you've been successful in too. Going in with the mindset, this is an experiment and you're just quickly learning and you're quickly changing things and moving on so that it's not so, so I was going to think then, then you have to have the bandwidth to expect failure. And how are you then able to cope if you don't have enough capital, knowing that this is not really, it may not work?
Absolutely. That's critical. So you need to either have enough capital at the start to have the luxury to have the time to do the experimentation. Certainly that's a part of it. And that's why repeat entrepreneurs tend to do better, right? Because they've got the lessons from before, but they also have some capital and they have some reputational benefits with the investors to be able to quickly raise money. So that's certainly part of it. But then also, the lean startup approach, where, you run cheap and you experiment and you build bootstrap your way. Absolutely. When I started Blue, we took what started as a loan turned into an angel investment of 10,000 US dollars. That's the last penny we put in that business, right? That we had no other external investment to then growing it globally. But it wasn't easy. It's not easy, right? And it means going months, if not years, without a salary yourself. And that's why it's wonderful to have a spouse who is incredibly patient and supportive, right?
So
Because
support is extremely important as well, right? The kind of
Absolutely.
support you have in there. Okay, so let's move to Usiku Games. And we've talked a bit about gaming and how you've been able to tailor innovations, global innovations, to your local reality in Africa, in Kenya and beyond Kenya.
So when I arrived in Kenya,
Which
I
was how
knew
long
that
ago?
about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Not long. I'm brand new.
Yeah, about the same time I did too.
I knew I wanted to start a new business, and I knew that I wanted to start a new industry, because the reality I've come to is that what I'm very good at is starting industries and ecosystems rather than individual startups. And so I looked around and said, where's the latent demand that has been unmatched? And what struck me was just the crazy amount of time and money that was being spent in sub-Saharan Africa on sports betting. In my personal opinion, and there may be people on the call who disagree, but in my opinion, a complete waste. About 37 billion US dollars in the top 5 markets between Kenya, Nigeria, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa. And most of the companies who are doing that, of course, are not African companies. So that's $37 billion a year that's leaving the continent, which is the opposite direction of how funds should be flowing and investment should be flowing.
Right.
And of course, the majority of it is coming from people in the slums, low income, who can't afford to be losing it, right? And I think if it was purely a gambling problem, I would say gambling has been around for ages. It's been in every country in the world. I'm not going to change that.
Yeah.
But when we started to drill into the numbers and we looked at it, we realized that companies like SportPesa, for example, here in Kenya, had 1 million daily active users. And the average bet across the platform was less than 100 shillings, less than $1 US. The average winning, when people won, which is not often because, of course, that's the nature of the business, they were winning about 10 cents US. So nobody is getting rich off of this. The reason why people were playing is just as a pacifier for boredom. It's just for the dopamine hit, the thrill of maybe winning something. And when you drive up country in Kenya or down the Mombasa Road, all the billboards and all the buildings were painted SportPesa. And that's why I believe people were playing it. If they were painted Candy Crush, my theory is people would be playing Candy Crush. But none of the international non-gambling companies are here. So I said, let's try something. Let's create local content that's locally relevant, that's non-violent, has no guns in any of our games, that is gender inclusive, that treats women not as objects, but as customers. They'll be valued. They create content that is made in Africa for Africa, with local heroes, Black music, local environments, local challenges, and create that dopamine hit where they still feel like they're winning something, but remove the whole element of gambling and make it games of skill instead of games of chance. And that really was the foundation of Usiku Games. Social impact gaming that are fun, first of all, but create a positive impact for both the gamer and the community.
Okay, so let's just kind of go back a bit, just to understand the process. So when you came to Kenya, you didn't have an idea it was going to be mobile gaming?
No, I did not.
Absolutely. So it wasn't like something you were really passionate about. You did not have any idea of this was going to be.
Not only that, this wasn't my first answer.
It wasn't your first answer.
No.
So how long did it take you to do some research? So again, back to this research and finding out what's going on. How long did that take you? Because this is obviously then you now had a goal, you have a goal or a vision of a multi-billion dollar company without even you having that from maybe when you were a child, right? So this is where like opportunities and the innovation and then bring, so there are business opportunities everywhere. How long did that take, that process take?
It was about 6 to 9 months, I think, of research and conversations and meeting people. Remember, when I landed in Kenya, I didn't know a single person other than my wife and my kids, but I didn't know anybody in Kenya.
Right.
And so I had to create a whole new social network. I had to get a house and a car and get schools for my kids and all that sort of thing. It's starting life all over again. But I was in love with Nairobi. I knew that there was a sense of optimism and opportunity here that as an entrepreneur is intoxicating. It's just, this is a place that is about to pop. You can tell and you can feel it in the air. And so I knew that whatever it was I wanted to do, I wanted to do it here. And so the search began. And as I said, it wasn't my first thing. And I'll confess to you, and just between you and me, don't share this with any of your audience, of course.
Well, they're watching. Okay.
I'm not even a gamer, right? I don't really play games. I don't have a passion for games. I didn't come from a history of being a hardcore gamer. A lot of people think, oh, you're like a gaming guy, right? No, I'm an entrepreneur, right? I look for opportunity. I look for businesses that can succeed. And then I put together amazing teams of people who are passionate about it, who have skills about it, who are much better at it than I am, right? And what I can do is I can direct them and lead them and bring all the resources necessary to create the industry.
And so again, back to the Africans and this research. I mean, you would say there is not much data, but you spend 6 to 9 months looking at other industries that you could possibly, as you said, it wasn't your first choice, or you looked at several others, and you probably went through some criteria of what you wanted before you finally settled on that. And this is
Absolutely.
Coming to a country you didn't know anyone, right? And what this means is that you can go to another country and use the same model and discover opportunities and go with that.
Absolutely.
I'm sure people would have had questions right now, but well, I would think of questions. That usually helps you because that's really intriguing. So actually, if we move down to the opportunities.
Can I interrupt 1 second though?
Yes, please.
I think there's a really important point in there.
Yes.
Which is, you're right, I didn't know anybody. I was brand new. I really didn't know a whole lot about the market, about Africa. But what I knew was that I could bring people together who do know it. And that's critical. To be successful, I need people who speak Sheng, who speak Hausa, who understand the individual markets, who understand the motivations of the customers, who understand the frustrations, who understand the history of what companies have tried it before. You need to pull together that team. And it's very rare to be the entrepreneur who knows all the answers. And if you think you do, you're fooling yourself, right? What this has proven is that you can come into it not knowing that. And so long as you're humble and you're hungry for information and you spend a diligent time learning rapidly, then you can get up to speed very quickly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's talk about innovations and creating that in your local, making your local reality. Obviously, the gaming globally. How did you? So let's talk about innovation. When you talk about being innovative and creating the next new thing, what are your thoughts around that in terms of being innovative vis-a-vis looking at opportunities across the globe and then bringing it to your own environment?
Yeah, so I think pure innovation, where you're inventing something completely new that the world has never seen before. My hat goes off. I respect people who can do that. I think it's hard. I think it's incredibly risky from an investor perspective. 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100, I don't know what the number is, pure innovations will fail. And there are 100, I always say, people always come to me, especially when I was running the app business. People, I've got an idea for an app, right? Ideas are cheap. There's ideas everywhere. Everybody has an idea. The difference is execution. How well, how efficiently, how professionally you can execute your idea. And most people who come up with ideas, they forget about it. They don't do anything, right? 80% of everybody who has an idea walking down the street in the day, they go, oh, I had a really cool idea today. They tell somebody at dinner time, right?
And that's
And then,
it. Yeah.
and then that's it. And they don't do anything. So 80% of those ideas just die on the vine. Then you have 20% left. 20% is people who actually decide to do something about it. Well, of that 20%, let's say 18 of them don't know how to do that, right? I've got a great idea. I'm going to do something about it, but I've never run a business before, right? I don't know where to get money, how capital, investors, hire staff, marketing plans, all that kind of thing. I don't have an MBA, right? And so they also fail, right? So now you're down to like the 2 or 5 people, you know, who have the resources, have the ability, and have the drive to drive that innovation through, right? Now those are going to be competing against each other and see which one does the best execution. And that's the pot you want to be in, right? If you have a great idea and you don't do anything about it, well, you've just wasted that idea.
Exactly.
Right? And so part of what we're doing is we're taking that innovation and we're looking at the ideas that have already succeeded. And we're eliminating the 80%, we're eliminating the 18, we're coming down to ideas that we know work.
And this is across the globe, right? It's not
across the globe.
Yes.
Across the globe. And now we say, okay, why is that not in Africa? Could that work here? What would we have to change to make it relevant to the local markets? Is it just enough to change the music and the backgrounds and the characters, to change the pricing, to change the models, to change the language, right? To make it in Swahili or Hausa or Pidgin or Zulu or whatever, right? Maybe that's enough, right? That you have 50 million people in Kenya who've never seen that game before. Even though there are millions of people who play that game, it's not here.
It's not.
And so if we can just tailor it and bring it locally and use the same mechanics and the same concepts, well, now you've eliminated 85% of your risk, right? But you're coming up with a product that, because it's made by a Kenyan team in this case, you know, with local musicians who are writing local soundtracks and local artists who are doing local characters, you know, and we've tailored the gameplay so that instead of collecting coins or whatever, instead now it's a Maasai game and you're collecting cowbells and aggregating cattle as a currency, right? Now you're relevant to the local market. The game itself is still the same, right? And that's what we do, right? And you could say, okay, you're copying. Well, I don't get insulted by that. We're not.
It's copying. Okay. You're not really copying. Yeah.
We're not copying.
You don't want to win the prize for innovation, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
What I want to win the prize for is being successful.
Be successful, right? And you've adapted it because there's a lot of adaptation and improving on what's that successful model locally here. So what you're saying is that really entrepreneurs across the continent can begin to do that and not necessarily spending too much time trying to think of something new. So you don't have to be innovative to be a successful entrepreneur.
I don't know if I want to say you don't have to be innovative.
Okay.
I think what we're doing is very innovative.
Right? Yeah, actually it is, yes. So maybe not a new idea. It's very extremely innovative actually, because there isn't anything like that right now, right? Yeah, so it is, okay.
So I'll give you an example. We have a video conferencing platform called Gumzo, okay? It's a Zoom alternative. And it's ironic that we're talking on Zoom today instead of Gumzo, but that's okay. Yeah. During the pandemic now, COVID times, Zoom has grown by 3,000%, right? They're doing $230 million revenue a month at the moment. Now, they won't say how much of that comes from Africa, but you can assume that at least maybe 5%. You know? At least. That's again, millions of dollars that are leaving Africa at a time now when we need it more than ever. And there are no servers on the continent from Microsoft Teams or Zoom or any of these guys, which means that even if you're in Nairobi, I'm in Nairobi, our call is getting routed through the undersea cables to Dubai or India or China and back, which is why the call quality is so bad. If we were doing this call today on Gumzo, the call would be much, much better because our servers are local in Africa.
Yeah.
At
And
the
that's
same
probably
time,
what happened with the issue right now with the rains and all that, because he had to go to America or Dubai and come back. Yes.
exactly. Exactly. At the same time, Zoom charges a lot of money on a very Western style monthly postpaid model. I guarantee you almost everybody who's watching this call today has a smartphone and has it on a prepaid plan. Because in Africa, prepaid is king. 93% of mobile phones are prepaid here, bite-sized prepaid plans.
Right.
So we said, okay, let's take video conferencing and follow that model. Let's do a prepaid video conferencing plan that you pay for the weeks that you want. You don't pay for the weeks that you don't want. At the same time, our costs are less than a third of what Zoom's are because we know what the local market is like for SMEs and consumers, right?
Yeah.
Our platform is in Swahili, it's in Hausa, it's in Zulu, it's in Portuguese, it's in French, so that again, it's locally relevant. So now we have customers, we have users in Guinea, in DRC, in Nigeria, right? In Kenya, that again, because they see, oh, this is an African solution. This understands me. And I know that when I pay money to this one, that money is staying in Africa and is creating jobs in Africa, rather than paying some literally billionaire founder in Silicon Valley.
Absolutely. And this is now where we talk, okay, we get to this impact and social impact. But so obviously it appears there's a lot of thinking processes, brainstorming to come up with new ideas. Yeah, even though we say it's not strictly innovative, but you can see a lot of innovation in what you're doing, right? We're talking about postpaid, prepaid, the models, payment models, and all of that. What is your thinking, brainstorming process? Walk us through what you do to come up with these new ideas. Is it with your team? Do you take time out, weekends, sometime, to just think through how do you do that?
So for starters, never sleep. That's the first key.
Okay, never sleep. As an entrepreneur, no, surely.
Sleep is overrated. So that's the first thing, right? I kind of.
How many hours of sleep do you have a day?
4 to 5.
Okay.
So there's a lot more time to be thinking and innovating. Second of all, I'm a compulsive mind mapper. I make mind maps. And I find mind maps are a really great tool, especially collaborative mind maps with your team, for taking just the total chaos that exists within an entrepreneur's head and creating structure around it, right? And by putting it down on paper, as we would say, it helps you.
You use paper?
Forgetting it. Sometimes I use paper.
Okay.
Yeah. I use whiteboards. I've got a huge whiteboard beside me here. Everywhere I go, I've got whiteboards because I want to be able to write whenever I can, right? And I make lists. Every morning I make lists. And I think in terms of mind maps. It helps me to create that structure. And that's how you then identify what are the dead end roads that you don't want to go down. What are the good paths to follow? What are the things that, may be a good idea or not, I don't know, but I'm going to spend a couple of months, maybe I'll put somebody on that, we'll do a bit more research, or I'm going to follow it and see the progress that other companies or competitors are doing, that sort of thing. And just sort of creating that structure out of the chaos really helps.
This is extremely insightful. And you're doing this every day? Or every day you're doing like a mind map and you're thinking through things?
I'm at least doing a list every day. These days, because I've been doing this for 20 years now.
Is it a list of what to do or just a list of your thoughts?
Everything. I have lists. So I have lists of what I need to do. I have lists of ideas that we're working on, lists of companies I want to talk to, lists of employees I want to hire. All lists. Is it in a
notebook? Sorry, I'm getting very micro, but I'm sure this is going to be very helpful too, because this is really very important. Is it like in a notebook like this or just in different sheets? And how do you go back and look at those?
So for many years, it was in Evernote.
Yes, okay,
and, Evernote. And MindJet for mind maps.
And what MindJet?
MindJet, yeah.
Okay.
and there's a bunch of mind mapping
Yes,
softwares, right?
they're enough. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, they all work
There are many, yeah.
in different ways, but generally okay.
Mm.
In the last year, I've switched across to a platform called Notion.
Mm.
And I find Notion to be absolutely addictive. It's a great way
Mm.
to put down those lists, keep things handy. It's an infinite notebook. You know, you never run out of pages. You can search through and find things 5 years from now when you go back. Oh, remember I was looking at that. You know, you can interlink between things. You can put pictures and videos and YouTube links and whatever it may be, and you just put it all down. And you can share it collaboratively with your team. Other tools that people use is like Trello. I really like Trello. Notion has a lot of Trello elements built into it.
Okay.
But yeah, there's so many great tools today that I didn't have when I started. That, you know, in those days, literally it was pen and paper and a whiteboard.
Right. And you found it very invaluable, right? So if you could not do without that, without kind of doing mind maps and lists and kind of dumping your thoughts into some structured manner.
It calms me because once it's down, then I don't have to think about it.
Think about it, yeah, yeah. And for a solo entrepreneur who doesn't have team, because I hear you say, you know, with your teams and all, what would you advise for somebody who is just starting out, you know, solo entrepreneur, have a lot of ideas and all of that? Would you still advise having some kind of a tool, and it could be paper, but at least dumping your thoughts and mind mapping that?
So MindJet, Evernote, Notion, Trello, all have free versions.
They do, yeah.
So you don't have to spend money to start using those tools. So absolutely, you should start on that. The second thing is, I think there's no reason to be a solopreneur anymore, because these days, between Fiverr and Upwork and all the different networks of freelancers and the gig economy, there are amazing people out there available to do individual tasks, typically very cheaply.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to raise $1 million to build an MVP of whatever your product is, right?
Yeah.
You need somebody to help you plan the UI. Great. There's 1,000 people on Upwork in India and Poland and Kenya, by the way, Morocco and wherever, Algeria, that you can hire for like $7.
Yeah, or even like some of them, everywhere, anything, and not even just technical. So I like that. So it's not necessary, and you can have a team, your virtual team, and get people from Fiverr who are, or other tools from wherever you are, and delegate that, and still have virtual meetings and not doing everything yourself.
Absolutely. And get to the point where you then have a minimum viable product, and then you can show that to your investors. And of course, more importantly, show it to your customers and test it and see what works, what is attractive and not. And then you know. But if you're trying to do it all by yourself, there's somebody who's faster than you.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, so what have been your and it's amazing how time is flying. It's like, oh my. 20 years in business, serial entrepreneur, what have been your toughest business challenges? And how have you been able to overcome them?
I think our biggest challenge repeatedly, and this is my own fault, is that I keep picking industries that don't exist. We started digital marketing when there was none. You know, I started with CD-ROMs. We built an app making platform, an app drag and drop app building platform when there was none. At one point, AppMaker was 10% of the iTunes market, right? I'm building a gaming industry today in Africa. It doesn't exist. And so hiring people to build that is like, it's like building an ark when it's already raining, right? That's a challenge, right? Scaling fast enough with people who have never done it before.
But you've been successful in doing that, in going to an industry that did not exist.
That's true. And I think I like to think that's one of my unique
values.
I
would say so. I would, because you say third time doing something doesn't exist and you're kind of out there, but you know it's going to work because your research has proven that yes, there is a huge opportunity there. If only I could crack through. Do you usually have times like, you don't know how to figure it out and you're looking for how to crack it? Are you
Every morning.
okay? No, okay, that makes me feel okay. You're like, how am I going to crack it? And how do you go through the process of then figuring how to crack? Exactly, because in your industry, it's new. Everything is new, and it's not like, let me go check it out here. How do you eventually crack those things, those challenges?
That's the fun, right? Can you imagine there are people who every morning go to work and do a job that they know what they need to do, and their boss tells them do this task and they do it, and then at the end of the day they go home and they're done? No, thank you. I wake up every morning, I have no idea what's going to happen that day. I know what I plan to do, but it never goes that way.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm sure this will give some comfort to some entrepreneurs working out here where you cannot figure out something, right? And you're struggling in terms of finding a solution. It could even be as simple, well, not simple, or even trying to raise capital, right? How are you going to get this done? How are you going to crack this? Maybe you have a major challenge and you're just trying to figure that out. So how do you eventually figure it out, Jay?
Tenacity. Just keep trying. Be willing to fail, fall down, pick yourself up, explore every avenue, be aggressive in how you do it, be a good person, because investors and employees can immediately tell if you're a jerk and you're just being opportunistic, right? Whatever it is that you choose to do, whatever business it is that you're going to do, you got to love it, because as an entrepreneur, you're going to be in it for years. And this is not a 9 to 5. You're going to be in it 20 hours a day, 24 hours a day. It's going to keep you awake at night. You're not going to have enough money to pay your staff. You're going to have things go wrong. You're going to have staff who wind up in jail or the hospital that you're going to have to deal with. I mean, I cannot tell you the stories that have happened over the years, right? You're going to have to deal with all of it. So be prepared and just recognize that that's a part of it. If that's not what you want to do, then go get a job. Right? Being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, I think. But if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
And there are rewards if you are tenacious, and
Absolutely.
that's why I love to have guests like you on, because things like what you're sharing, you can't find that in a textbook or in a book, right? And also it's comforting to know somebody is experiencing what you have experienced, and it's like, hey, it's okay. Right? Keep going, and there are good days and also many bad days or many challenging days.
And when you did your bio at the beginning and the questions you're asking me, you're only asking me about the successful businesses. There are others. I can tell you stories about all the ones I've done that haven't worked. Right?
Yeah, the many ones you did not, right? That did not work, right?
Yeah. That's right. And we don't talk about those, but I learned from them. They're a big part of who I am as an entrepreneur. Yeah. And they're why my investors trust me, because I've got the scars. I've got the white beard at this point, to show that, I've failed. I've gone broke. There's been times when I made huge mistakes, but I learned from them. I picked myself up, and then I built big businesses that I sold that were global, Right. But any entrepreneur who tells you that they've done one business and it was successful, well, that's not an entrepreneur to me, right? Anybody can start a business and sell it for millions of dollars. An entrepreneur is the one who does that, then fails, loses it all, and does it again.
Okay, so in terms of let's talk a bit about the failures and the process you go through learning from them. Do you have a structured process? Do you document things, and say, okay, this is why I did this, and learn from the, just what do you do? Given that you said you've failed many, many times.
Not nearly as formal as it should be.
Okay.
There's a lot of difficult discussions with myself, even more difficult discussions with my wife. Right? It helps absolutely to marry somebody who is much smarter than you, who is a great advisor.
Well, kudos to Jay's wife. So let's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The main thing is to be honest with yourself, right? Because you're not helping anybody.
No, you're not. And you have to be true to yourself, right? And learn from that. Okay, we're wrapping up now. So let's talk about social impact in Africa and, just what that means to you and how you're able to combine for-profit, um, Usiku being for-profit, but at the same time also impacting the countries or the nations. How do you balance that, and what's your philosophy around that?
Sure. So I think, and this is not really so unique to Africa, but Africa as a whole has a history of predatory businesses,
Mm.
businesses who stole resources, natural resources, businesses who took advantage of labor, businesses that have taken money out of economies that didn't have a lot, right?
Mm.
It's a shameful history, I think, in many ways. And then again, it's not unique to Africa, but there's a lot of examples here, right? I was determined to, when building a new business here, to create one that creates value, not only for our investors and our founders, but also for our customers, our employees, and the community at large. I see those all as stakeholders.
Yes, definitely.
Um, the customers must benefit from it. If you're just stealing from your customers, then that's not a good business. That's not positive social impact. Um, and so I think there's a way to do that, and there's not not a long history of people thinking necessarily in that way, but I think it makes a better business, more robust, more successful, and more trusted by the community. And
Mm.
so we have a mission of what we call hashtag gaming for good,
Mm.
right? Where we create games that benefit not only our players and our customers, but the community at large.
Mm.
Our games are subtly educational. They help people save. We do enforced savings. We do behavioral modification. We help farmers to learn about climate change. We help reforestation, where we're creating
Through
games
gaming.
that, through gaming, we have games. We have a game called, with an organization called Seed Balls, where people play the game and raise money that plants real trees to reforest Kenya, as an example. We
Wow.
have we have games that help with women's empowerment, that help
Mm.
young girls and teens feel better about themselves and raise their
Mm.
self-esteem. It's a game called
Mm.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Um, yeah, we have, that's, I believe you can have fun and do good at the same time.
Mm. And no
And if
matter
you,
how small or big you are, but having that mindset again of how, so when you were even incorporating that, obviously you must have thought through that in terms of how can I bring in, so it's not just a CSR kind of responsibility, but it weaves through the fabric of the company from the
if
get-go.
you're, if you wait until you're big and profitable so that you can do some CSR donations or have your staff do a cleanup one day a month or something like that, then you've missed the whole plot,
Mm.
right? The gaming for good slide was the very first PowerPoint slide we made, right?
Mm.
That was the foundation of the company, right?
Mm.
And now say, okay, now how can we make this as a company?
Wow, that's so instructive. And really, this is what this forum is about, that really, no matter where you are, what size, you can begin to have impact where you are. As you said, it's
And
not,
still be profitable.
and still be yeah, we're here to, yeah, and still be very profitable. Yeah, it can go hand in hand. Yeah,
Absolutely.
excellent. Okay, our time is almost up. So final parting words. What would you advise, words of advice from your decades of experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly that you've seen, and now in Africa, having been in America and North America, Asia, and now in Africa, and obviously interacted with African entrepreneurs. What would you say, to somebody who's just starting up and to somebody who is established, but obviously facing a bit of challenges at this time?
So we've talked about a lot tonight already,
Yes, we have.
right?
So
I
just
think
whatever, yeah.
I think for starters, don't give up. There are going to be very, very bad times in every business. Uh, you know, the successful businesses are the ones who get through them, right? The failures are the ones who didn't and gave up. So that's the first thing. There is no business that didn't have a bad time. The second thing is to have your eyes open and be constantly looking for opportunities and ideas. As I said, ideas are cheap, they're everywhere. But most people don't see them. And so you have to be looking, as I said, further down the road to see, where are there gaps? Where are there things that are missing that you can provide? And look around and see who else is maybe thinking the same way. And if you think that you're unique or you have some unique skills or access to capital or technology or products or whatever it may be, great, do it. And if you don't do it, you'll never succeed.
Excellent. Jay, thank you so very much. If we're live, people will have been commenting and thanking you. So, but on behalf of the several thousands of members, I'd like to thank you for sharing from your wealth of experience to this forum. Very, very, very insightful. We're actually going to summarize them because some key points. I'm actually going to listen to it again because you really did make shared some very important insights around that. Thank you so very much, and really, I'm so glad that you are a special guest today.
No, listen, thank you for organizing this and hosting this and being the one that the thousands can count on to have this conversation. When I came up as an entrepreneur, the only way I learned what I know today is by listening to advice from other people, asking questions, conversations like this one. And so I'm delighted that maybe now I have an opportunity to share the wisdom and the scars that I've got to help other people along the way and come up the ladder.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop. Okay. Let me just stop that.